Hi, everybody. I'm Mia. Thanks so much for joining us here today. I'm so excited because I have my dear, dear friend, Tahiti Kulia, with me today. Tahiti is an amazing intuitive facilitator and a multidimensional creative. It's so hard to kind of put you in a box, Tahiti, because you do so many things. She is just like medicine, beauty medicine is what I think of when I think of Tahiti too. Everything she does is just so like luscious and beautiful and nourishing, from like the food that she makes to what her home looks and feels like. Um, even when she comes over to my home, she kind of just judges everything. She just has this kind of magic to her, and she infuses that into her intuitive sessions, into the creative work and her photography, her women's circles, her dinner parties, everything. So yeah, Tahiti, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks,
Um,
love. Thank
yeah.
you.
And we've just been talking a lot. I mean, we talk about this a lot, but about kind of like business and finding our purpose in the new paradigm. If you've been here at all, I love talking about this frequency shift that we're going through, aka ascension, aka the Great Awakening, New Earth. I mean, those are all just names, but we're going through such a massive shift, and everything is changing, and we're feeling it. And sometimes it's like, like an earthquake in our life, and sometimes it's really graceful. And I think we can call in, always calling these shifts in the most graceful way. But yeah, we just wanted to talk about kind of what that means to both of us, how we've been working with these themes in our own life, and just kind of what we see coming. Yeah, Tahiti, do you want to just share a little bit about like the containers that you've been holding and how you're working with people around this?
Yeah, thanks so much. I love beauty as medicine. That's such a perfect a perfect invitation for us as like a really small, super attainable step. Like how do we create this new paradigm through what we touch and what we taste and what we share and what we create and curate in our lives, right? I think I'm like a curator of spaces and experiences, and like kind of very similar to you, but in the sense of like curating this feeling, right? Like I want to lead by like what people will feel. And I think in the new paradigm, that's what's leading us in general. How will we feel? We were so saturated by how we'll look to others in the old paradigm, right? How much resources we can sort of create, how much we can really like just extract. And I feel like in the new paradigm, we focus on how much we're going to output, how much we're going to pour into this experience, this earthly experience. And I think that every person who is chosen to enter this new paradigm and birth this new paradigm, they enter in through the way that they're most familiar, or they're entering in like the paradox of the opposite of what they wanted to create. So for me, being an
Mhm.
entrepreneur since a really young age, I think I've always led with this sort of new paradigm approach. And luckily, I've been supported by the majority of like the people I was, the family I was born into, too. They helped me elevate that. They empowered me in that. Of course, I still get the question of like, what is it you do? Like from the older generation. But luckily, I had a mom who really helped me, who like really like pioneered for me and or like, really provided for me in sort of whatever it is I wanted to take on. And so for a lot of it is business. And we talk a lot about business of how this new paradigm is going to be regenerative and equitable. And it's going to, we're building new value systems. We're building new things we're looking at what's really important to us. We're getting to the really deep roots of our desires, of what's in our hearts, of what we want to create on this planet. And we're using that as our guidepost. We're using that as our guiding system. We're rewriting these new ways of being in business, of being in relationship with one another. And for me, I've been really focusing on like what would it look like to be in my purpose, on my path, in the highest service to humanity, and it be really abundant, and it feed me physically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually. And not only that, but it also feeds my community. nourishes those around me. It builds legacy. It's so much more than just like this me. I think we're moving into this new paradigm of how will this genuinely serve everyone. And it's been cool to see that play out in the people I work with. Like I can see them like birthing these new ideas and these new things for the paradigm that I'm like, oh my gosh, why haven't we thought about that? Or like, wow, that is the direction we want to go, or that is so much more of a better solution to this problem we have on this planet or this problem we've made. So it's been really cool to see. And there's so much to dive
Yeah.
into.
I just want to say that's like so important just to even be that sounding board for people and then creating a container to kind of for us to dream into that because we didn't grow up in a culture that really did. I mean, we've all mostly went through the school system that really taught us to kind of be a cog in a machine and to, to keep in line and don't daydream too much and don't do the, just so many rules and it made us feel really small. So it can when you start to, like for me, starting to like expand my thinking when I was working and living in New York and seeing that people were so feeling constricted, it felt a little indulgent to start to like let myself dream into what could be. And I just want to say that I think it was maybe Esther Hicks's husband, who channels Abraham Hicks, who maybe even wrote a book about this, how he felt it was so important. So if you have that like idea or that little dream, to at first just kind of keep it to yourself until you know that it's strong enough to share, or only share it with like Tahiti, who's going to be like, oh hell yes. Because oftentimes, we get beat down because we share that with someone who's like, oh, that's stupid, or like, well, how are you going to do that? Or like, well, what does that mean? Or like, I don't know, and sometimes it's a parent or somebody that really has your best interest in heart, but they don't want to see you struggle. So they go into the fear. So it's just so huge for you to even just create that container. And I think that like yes, as we move into this new paradigm, we're all doing that for each other. That's part of like that frequency shift. Like we all can be this for each other and hold that frequency and that vision so we can expand and not get stuck in the fear.
Yeah, and expansive is exactly how I would explain the energy of when I can feel into an idea that is led by spirit versus like the mind or the conditioning.
Mhm.
So a lot of the work that I do, I've been like trying to sit down and really identify like what is it I do, right? Because I have so many different modalities as a manifesting generator. And I love it and I'm owning it now. I'm finally in that place of like, wow, what a gift to have so many interests and so many ways to use my skill sets and to serve others and to serve myself and to like share this essence. But expansiveness, when I feel into someone telling me an idea or a concept or like some business plan, if it feels expansive, I'm like, oh, they're on the path, like they're answering the higher call. They're choosing this new paradigm approach of executing a vision. When I feel the like there is maybe an excitement, but there's still some sort of density there, I'm like, oh, we're still even for myself, oh, I'm still operating from an old paradigm. I'm still operating from an old belief. I'm still operating from something that used to live within me generations ago or eons ago that is like begging to be, dissolved. So expansive energy, the way that it feels, how it's going to take up space in this really delicious, yummy way is always like a clear indicator, both for me and when I work with people, of like something that is just totally new paradigm approach, really soul led. And it's been really like cool to see within myself and within others.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, how does it actually even feel in like your body? You know what I mean? Is it like exciting and it feels like you open up. And for me, I've kind of learned also to like not even like I was saying, maybe I won't share it with somebody that I don't think would approve because it's not ready yet. But also I won't let myself go into the how it's gonna happen either. I just try to maybe make a list of like all the things that would be really fun about this idea or stay in that frequency rather than get into like for me, it's like I do a lot of events. So the more curatorial side and not get into the projection zone of like, well, how would we actually like, the nuts and bolts of it? Cause for me, that can just like make it start to feel a little bit more heavy in my body. but like
Yeah,
finding
we're
that,
so wired to source solutions really quickly
yes.
to all of these ideas, thinking they're problems, and there really is never problems. Like I've been like in this deep portal right now with how imbalance shows us that we just want to be in balance. And for that kind of stuff, and this is like stuff I go in and out of because you know me, like we have our own, personal relationship too. It's like been stuff I've been really like massaging and working out. But the one thing I'm like is like, oh, an imbalance is not a problem. An imbalance is a call to bring into right action and to balance. Like everything's this invitation, this portal. And the mind is where like that wants to solve, it wants to like put all these like, okay, we just need to figure this out. But the body knows, the body will always tell us, the body will always respond in that feeling way. This is why I love like Keone's work, because we're learning emotional intelligence, right? And that's the biggest thing on the planet we can do, because we create from our emotions.
Yeah.
Every emotion creates some sort of change or some sort of flux in our
Yeah.
experience. So the more we get, and the emotions are felt through the body, you cannot analyze emotions through the mind, which I have done for so much of my life. I realized I was always so sensitive, quote unquote, and I am. We're all sensitive creatures. But I was trying to um figure out these emotions, process these emotions, these feelings and sensations through my mind. And I've been learning to let my body, because my body is going to tell me. And this is also why like learning human design has been so cool, because learning that I'm a sacral being and I have that sacral yes or no within me. It's like the more we can tap in and tune into all the different ways that our body is always trying to guide us. I
Mhm.
think too, a lot of like my earlier practices when I kind of had like my awakening and I started to kind of tap into all my gifts more is like I still wanted to intellectualize it, and also like, experience it in the outer world, or even the ethereal, or like the galactic sense. And what has helped me the most actually bring things into action and actually like manifest things is like, how can I let it move through the body? How can I experience it through the body? And that's one thing I've been learning myself and then sharing with the people I work with is like, how can you use the body to be this vehicle for how it wants to express this like planetary purpose? Because I always say like, we're in bodies for a reason. Like we're these light beings. And if we were supposed to just be light bouncing around, we would be, but we're in these bodies. And
Yeah.
so we get to be playing the physical.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like I like to share like the two Mercado Sagrado symbols. It's like the circles. To me, that's it's embodying that like the earth element and the ether, like that we're like meeting here and we're pulling that like magic into the earth plane, into our physical beings. And so when I want to, especially when I was younger, I just wanted to check out. I had a period when I was a drug addict, and it was really, I didn't want to be in my body and I didn't really want to be here. It felt just like icky and hard. But like I agree with you. I think that's like what we're meant to do. And it feels way better to embrace that and take care of the body and nurture it and really pay attention to those subtleties. And that's like always been it's a practice for me all the time, really, to still do that. But it's so rewarding and it's so helpful.
Yeah,
um
and I feel that as these physical creatures and these physical beings experience this material plane is why we've learned to express ourselves through the material. So artists and creations and makers and like all the things that you deal with Mercado, like it's to me an extension of our inner expression. And all of those expressions were made through emotions and feelings, whether they're high emotions or low emotions, whatever they are. And I'm learning to like, I really want to truly be purely led through my creations that are not through a force or a need to solve a problem, which has been
yes,
in the past. I think a lot of like, we even think of like entrepreneurs are here to solve problems. And
right.
I don't think entrepreneurs are here to solve problems. I think entrepreneurs are here to follow their heart and create a life and a lifestyle that best serves their values. And not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. And that's something also too, I think a lot of us think I don't think we're going into a more individualistic way of living. I think we're harmonizing into a more collaborative and interdependent way of living with one another. It's understanding that we all need one another. So the entrepreneur, of course, needs that person who's going to participate in their product or their offering, but we also need systems and businesses that are working in tandem and together and in harmony. So I really feel like I've been working so hard on, especially as we're moving through the density of the material of like all these like financial collapses and system collapses and these things that are imploding on themselves, right? Like shit, excuse me, like things that are not not of like this true value, this regenerative life-giving force, this beautiful, pure, intentional place, I feel are imploding on each other, as you know, and we talk about a lot. And the things that are like real, the people that are real, the people who are really driven by the inner spirit are coming out more. I think that's what we're seeing. And with that, that means like with all these money changes, with all these financial changes, these currency changes, these system changes, these policy changes, everything, right? Our relationship to it has to change too. And so we go and move through the density of that, of like money blocks or like things happening. Like it's been such a dense year of me of that, of knowing the most of like where we're heading and like what's about to happen and how great it's going to be, and still like facing the like current reality of that and having like really big setbacks because of that, because our relationship has to change first, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, there's so much work around, I'd say, like self-love, self-worth, trusting our soul guidance that we're going to be okay, that we can go through some of these portals that might seem really intense or scary. And actually, if we can align with our soul's guidance, sometimes what happens is we up level through a miracle, and what seems like it was going to be like crash and burn situation turns into like the most expansion maybe we've ever experienced. I mean, I've had that in the last few years. I've had that circumstance happen. And so it's a really wild, intense time. But yes, it's like such a deep invitation to be embodied, like you're saying. And what I do is kind of like maybe even make a list or be like, okay, what's coming up, and just like sit with that and then tune in, maybe use the pendulum or a different way and kind of see what I need to clear. And there's so many different ways we can kind of clear these things. It's not, I don't think it's complicated at all. It's kind of almost like a witnessing and allowing and a surrender and acceptance. And then we're like, okay, I'm ready to release that loop so I can step into this. And I just want to say too, Tita, I love I think this is so important to kind of like even say again, is that you differentiated like doing something kind of to solve a problem versus doing it from like a soul expansion inspiration. Because I've talked a lot with like my personal mentor about that. And I think that's, I just got chills. Yeah. It's like, that is so huge to me of like where we are going, and so important because for me, the first time that I was like, well, what does it mean? I had to really sit with that. And it is energetically like really different. And again, it's like, we have not been trained to allow ourselves to just go into that. Like, you feel like, oh, well, what am I doing? Is it a business that fits somewhere in society, and will it make money? It's easy to do that instead of just be like, what is like my deepest desire to even it turns into priorities, like what do I want my life to feel like daily, who do I want to be around, and starting to just train ourselves into that. What does that even mean, that like doing things from expansion and inspiration. So thanks for
Yeah, and
yeah.
it brings me to this theory I've been working with a lot, which is like I want to give from the overflow that's alive with me, rather than like if you think of it almost as like a sourdough that starter that you keep feeding, like you don't want to give, like you don't take the sourdough, you have to wait for that overflow
Yeah.
of that sourdough starter to create your bread. You don't take it from the whole thing, because then nothing would be left. And I've been thinking that a lot of like how can I give from the overflow that's alive with me, and how do I create the overflow? And it's like all the practices that you always share with me and that you do for yourself, like what it's, it's like basic of like law of attraction, like you go into that frequency and that mode, you create that within your reality first, you do the things that are going to create overflow, and then you give from that place. And that's, I think, part of the new paradigm too, what we're going to give away, what we're going to spread and create in our businesses, in the way that we give and exchange information, all of it, like however it's going to be from the place of overflow. And so every day I ask myself, what would build up all this energy, all this emotion, all this reserve, all these feelings, all this like goodness, this aliveness within me today? Because I want to give from the top of that like cream. I'm not going to give from like
Yeah.
the base of the milk. Like I need to give that cream top because that's the good stuff that we want to give away. And so for a lot of us, like the really basic breakdown is self-care, right? Like we have to care for ourselves. But okay, so but beyond self-care, because I went into a little bit of the last year of self-care is just like freezing basically and going into just like, okay, I'm just gonna like perish here for a bit. And that was creating a stagnancy and not allowing that overflow to build up. So I think it's important to look at outside of our business, outside of what we're creating, like what is inspiring you? What is alive with you? How do you build that? How do you nourish that? How do you feed that? And that's through like the experiences like, meditation and dance and like these things. But it's also just like for me, it's been like, okay, foraging, collecting flowers, like beautifying the house, like these things that you don't think are adding value, but they actually are because they're building on the aliveness within us. They're building on that energy.
Yeah, I think I like the thinking that is like just the word play. It's like how we weren't, play. It was such a child like thing and such a thing that like was okay in certain containers or certain times, but it's like how can we infuse that back into our lives? Because it's so important and it's just a lot of times if I think back to me when I was more constricted and wasn't didn't really understand what we're talking about here now, Tahiti. It was like I didn't allow myself that, and if I even if it was suggested, it was like often it was maybe like, oh well, that I don't want to be seen as stupid or I don't, it's silly or whatever. It's like we also have to stop caring what people think, and if like you like doing something and it brings you joy, who
Mm-hmm.
cares? Like who cares? And I realized that a lot of the people that I was worried about judging me were deeply unhappy, and so why did I care what they thought anyway? So yeah, just
Yeah.
to bring that, like, just to realize that, and that's a little a process too. Was for me of like, just owning who I really am and not giving a fuck basically, and stepping into that, and doing the things that you love every day or when you can or whatever. Like you're saying, Tahiti, just like what really brings you joy. What maybe did you do as a child that you set aside because you didn't have time? Whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be complicated, but just start to weave that back into our lives. So important.
Yeah, I was even just thinking of as you were saying, play, which is such a, like, it totally encapsulates everything that is part of the new paradigm. The energetics of a boardroom, which even like the words, like a room you are
Boardroom.
bored in,
Yes.
plus a room, a constricted space, the energetics of that. And I always talk about this with my business in the new paradigm cohort people of like, when you're entering a space of idea or like trying to expand on a concept or a thing you want to bring out with your business, remove yourself from this boardroom of going and trying to like convince someone that you have this thing to offer, right? Here's the metrics, here's the data, here's the vision, here's the like we look at what it would create and then we look at all the reasons, like the exit strategy, like what's the potential loss, what's the potential gain, like the way that we've looked at business plans, although helpful, although can show us trends and can show us what would be risky and not risky, that energy of that of like, let me convince you of this idea
Right.
versus approaching our work, approaching our business, approaching our creations as this playground, those words, play, ground,
Yeah.
foundational, expansive. Ground can be as wide as the entire planet. Like the energetics of that are so different. And I always say, approach your ideas, your work, your creations as a playground. You're going to try things on. You're going to fumble. You're going to have a really great time, hopefully. You're going to get into some wacky, weird scuffles in relationships. You're going to like, pick on the boy that you like. Like there's going to be things that are going to come up, but it's the playground. You're allowed to go and express, cry, dance, laugh,
Mm.
swing, change your mind, get on the slide, have ups, have downs. And like the energetics of that are so different. So anytime that I'm noticing a blockage or something that isn't moving in the way that I want my life to live, I try to like come back to that of like, this is a playground. The whole earth is a playground. We're
Yeah.
taking it all way too seriously. And the thing
Yeah.
is like, we have to get so unserious right now to make serious impact.
Yeah, it's like
We
it's a
really do.
paradox because it's
Yeah.
it's it's where we're spirit and bodies, I believe, and we're in a learning game. And that's also why I love that book, The Game by Frances Scovel Shim. I mean, it's like a genius. It's so beautiful what she shares. It's kind of what you're saying, Tahiti. It's like, it's actually really expansive to look at it as a game in that way, and be more playful. It's so helpful and just more fun.
Yeah, and it makes me think about as we grow, we're going to have all these experiences, as we start off as a young child, or even as an infant, we're heavily influenced by the environment, we're heavily influenced by our parents, all of that. It grows, it expands, we're going to have these relationships, these learning moments, these teaching moments. And really, like, all we're doing in business as well is like the same thing. We're just learning how to expand into a way that suits us the best because it's different for each person. How we even access creativity can be different for each
Yeah.
person. For some people it's listening to music, and for others it's going for a drive. It's like there's no right or wrong way to access these points within us. And that's, I think, part of the new paradigm as well, is like giving everyone the opportunity to find what supports them in building this and playing in this and like trying on the game. And I also always think about like that growing process. It's like you have all this external influence, but you're the one that's actually growing. Your body is the one that's changing. Your mind is the one that's expanding and shaping. And I think about this a lot in the new paradigm as well, as like we can't wait for people to give us like the permission. Like we have to be the ones to decide to give ourselves this, like, birth this new
Yeah.
paradigm, choose these things that are going to be different, where there's no template right now. Like we are the templates. We're the living templates.
Totally. And I can kind of like, I have this feeling of how things are going to be in the future, but we're still creating it. It's kind of both. And I can just even remember when I was, working as like a photographer, in New York on commercial jobs and stuff. And you would really, the guidance would be like, well, when you'd be doing my bids or things like that, it's like, well, you don't want to charge too little. Obviously, you don't want to charge too much. You kind of want to be in line with the other people because you don't want to throw it off for everybody else. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Same way it's kind of energetically, like if we start creating this together, it kind of like, it helps to shift it for everybody, because suddenly if you're not, I mean, it's as simple as like if you're doing your project that you love or whatever that work is for you, and the paradigm, how we've been living in is essentially like, for a lot of people, like you're meant to be available all the time. Text, phone call, email, the weekends, what have you. And it's not going to, I don't think it's going to be that way in the new paradigm or in the future. And if we start, you should start having more boundaries with that. It doesn't even have to be in a heavy way, just could not be available for that. It helps shift it for everybody else too. And obviously that's like one aspect, but there's a bazillion other aspects like that too. Um,
Yeah, and to zoom out on that is the idea that we are these cyclical creatures and that we haven't been living as in much reciprocity with the season and the seasonal changes and the ways that we're affected by that. We're affected by the changes on the planet. We're affected by, something closing down and going into winter and then opening for spring. We are connected to that. There's such a deep, and that's, interconnected to this. And that's something that I like have been really working on or wanting to invite more into my life, is like understanding that, okay, if I'm going to build, like, what would be the highest possible outcome for the type of business that I want to build, because it's based on these values and this legacy I want to build. And then to expand on that, well, what does that look like for you throughout the year? And one thing that's like such a big dream for mine is to work basically all through the year and then be like closed down for the winter, and basically go in like we would in winter, and just use that as a time to like connect with family and travel and like do those things. And I'm still trying to work through how I can like
yeah.
apply that. But it's this is part of the new paradigm, is our ability to like, we're going to be able to create this type of whatever schedule, whatever is this idea of what we want to create for ourselves, because this 9 to 5, this like work as a machine, do not honor the seasons and the cycles of nature, do not honor, grief and loss, only celebrate that which like is our achievements, continue to achieve, continue to reach. All that is all like, our relationship is totally changing, and we're going to get to decide, each one of us, what we want that to look like. And that's something I think I'm the most excited about, is how the old way of doing work and interacting with the world and business is really shifting with that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I totally agree. It's like really start to think about, and I did this a few years back. I mean, it's a continual thing, I think, to check in with ourselves. It's like, what are my priorities? I just read something before we jumped on that was really beautiful. It was like a guy's story about growing up with a father who made a conscious decision to have a certain kind of a job. It was like an auto parts guy. So I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. But he basically had the opportunity to like kind of go higher in the company or whatever. And he was like, no, I don't want to do that because his priorities were to be able to spend time with his family and to be able to be present. And at that time, people thought he was crazy because it was normal to just keep going up the ladder. But that would have meant like working overtime, working all the time, and never seeing the kids or whatever. And it was just this guy being so appreciative of his father, knowing himself and seeing that and really choosing what his priorities were. And at that time, it meant really having a lot less money. But he didn't, basically this guy was like, I had the happiest childhood. It didn't matter. So there's like that. But also I do think we're moving into a time where I know that money is changing. We're about to have a huge revaluation. Humanity is going to have the abundance that was essentially hidden from us, returned, and the fiat slave system is on the way out. So things are really going to shift. So even if like you hit a certain, you're like, well, I don't want to be broke to choose that. I don't think we're going to have to. I think there's going to be abundance, but I think it can be really helpful right now to tune into what your priorities are, because you're still abundant, regardless of the financial and the abundance. It's like we're still shaping our own lives, and we still have to decide like, well, yeah, how much time do I want to spend with my family? How much time, like Tahiti, maybe I don't want to work all winter, or maybe I like want to spend a month in this country and a month in that country, just to start like allowing ourselves to dream into like what is the dream, like what's the most exciting version that we can think of.
Yeah, and really allowing ourselves to change our mind. Like
Yeah.
that's the one thing as a manifesting generator. I think I was like, I always worry, oh, what will people think if I like suddenly pivot? And knowing that my energy just wants to move in the different ways that it wants to is giving me such permission. And that's why I think like understanding ourselves and getting out of the way of that kind of programming and that kind of
Yeah.
belief system allows for us all to like fill in where we're meant to. Because how I see like all of us within humanity is this perfectly fitting puzzle pieces, and we're like kind of finding all the different ways to like, because we all belong, like there's this perfect puzzle that's here and there's this perfect piece of belonging, and we all have a piece in it, and we're all just like moving around the puzzle pieces to figure out where that is. But in order to find that place that we innately belong and fit, we have to like totally be okay with the unique shape that we are. We
Yeah.
have to totally own every weird little curvature and piece, because literally that means that I'm going to find that other person, that other community member, that other piece of this, puzzle, and like click right into them. And that's just like how I've tried to remember is like we each have such a unique like purpose here, truly in this place of belonging.
I love that. Yes, Tahiti, I so agree. And I just have to share that like that's been part of my joy with working, doing Mercado Sagrado for the past decade. I work with so many creatives and creators and artists and just people that don't fit into boxes. And I would say that's what's so special about, I would say, almost all of them and their stories is it's like they've gone through that journey of what you're talking about. And I'm just getting chills because like I'm thinking of certain friends, that have told that I know their stories, and it's like the hero's journey kind of, because it's like they grew up in this family that was really stuffy and they were supposed to do real estate or whatever, and they did that, and then they were like deeply unhappy and ill, and they followed their soul's inspiration to start making, this one friend making like these hats, and it was like just going to the river and repurposing these hats, and it's like, and I'm sure it's, his family's like, you're a little crazy, what happened, he's just, we don't know what's happening with John, but he just followed that inspiration. It turned into the most beautiful life and journey and our wearable art, and now he guides these other young people into following their dreams. So it's just like, we don't know especially when you're doing something that you don't see anybody else doing, it's gonna feel like weird, you know? But like that is really almost all the artists I work with, that's they all have a story like that. And that's kind of what makes what they're doing so potent and beautiful. And then so many of them have started collaborating in different ways. So like it's just when you start this, you don't know, you really don't know all of the magic yet. So it's so important to just trust yourself. Just trust the
Yeah, I always like to remind myself that in some ways I'm different from my family because I was designed to be. And for all of
Wow.
us, like where we're trying to find like, wow, why do I think differently? Why do I feel differently? Why do I see that differently from, you know, where I was raised, where I was born, like the community I am, is because there's a deeper ask. There's something different wanting to be born. And we've been taught that different is bad. We've been
Yeah.
taught conformity. We've been taught to just, you know, fall in line. And different is really like here to show us that we are here to do something that is new paradigm, that is birthing this new planet. And there isn't a template for it because it hasn't yet quite been done. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean that it's not needed or it's not welcomed. It just means that we're going to have to be the ones to go and pioneer that and extract that and then bring that forward. And I think that's why we have all these, you know, lighthouses, these wayfinders, these, you know, these people paving these paths and having these conversations and opening ourselves up. And we've done all this in, you know, inner landscape and this alchemy to get there, is because at least we can kind of maybe hold open the crack of the door to the light a little bit more of it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to be like, you have to do it this way, but hey, I felt a different call. I acted on that call. I've created something new, and there's so much hope in that. And like that's what we can show and share with people, right? That's why you're having these conversations. You've been holding this frequency of hope for people. Like here, like, yeah, look, there's all this shit going down, and yet what do you want to create? What could you do differently to birth this new paradigm? That's what these conversations, that's what all we are, is literally like fractals of other human beings being like, I know there has to be this other way of doing it. I know there's this deeper truth here. Okay, yeah, there's a glimmer. Like I'm seeing that shine over there. I'm seeing that sparkled. And I'm just kind of like having all this like just chills as well of like, okay, yeah, like this is the conversations you need to be in when you are trying to enter a new paradigm or birth this new paradigm, enter in a business, enter into creation, initiate this space for yourself. You have to be in places where these conversations are happening. You have to be around people who are holding that frequency as well. And you reminded me of that so much the other week. And I literally was thinking, I was like, you know, like, am I delusional or am I just in the wrong conversations? Because often we're just in the wrong conversations, and they're not the quite attuned frequency of what we want to create. And so being around people, listening to things about that are on the frequency of what you want to create is really important. It's really important. That's why friendships, relationships, people have vibrated literally out of our lives, right? They have
Yeah.
dissolved out of our lives over the last few years because we need to be in the places where that vibration is a match. And it's not a hierarchy thing. It's not an authoritarian thing. It's not a better than thing. It's literally that I need to make sure this thing that's alive in me continues to be nourished and recognized, because there's a purpose here. I wouldn't have been built different from what is here unless I was made to do something different. And I got to have that reflected to me. And that's why you call in these people and, you know, you hold these events and everything, because it's got to be matched right now. There's no other choice. Like I think about it always as like, I could choose to conform which feels like death and density and
Yes.
just like, or I could choose to like, wow, I owe these systems, these power players, these things that have been holding the like strings, the purse strings, the like all of the theatrics that have been going on the planet. Like my biggest FU to them would to be in my purpose, would to be different, would be to build on this aliveness. You know, that's always like, how could I give the biggest FU to
Well,
these systems? Oh, I could just be me. What a
yeah.
gift.
Authenticity is like the highest frequency, they say. I don't know, but it's definitely a really high frequency. And like, yes, and everything has been inverted. So we've been living through, I mean, this is like a really intense learning school earth, you know, and we've been living through a time where there's been just systems that are so dehumanizing, so anti-life, and everything has been inverted. So yeah, like that's exactly how I felt, TD, when we were starting Mercado Sagrado. I was like, I just want to support everything that's wholesome and pure. I want to support what's true after seeing the inversion fully, you know. But what's beautiful is we're creating this shift, and what we're stepping into is that breakdown of that. And in the future and in the new paradigm, like what will be championed and appreciated is creativity, is authenticity, is that pure heartedness. Like that's not what we've been living, so it's so hard to imagine, but that is what we're stepping into. So that is going to be more and more just like on deeply honored and appreciated, and it's going to grow and expand. And that other stuff is just, it's falling, we're seeing it, it's falling away because in the new frequency it can't, it's not aligned with that. It's not aligned with that. So yes, for all of you guys who've just felt like the outlier and the outsider and just like, oh God, it just doesn't feel right here, and just seeing this offness, and like often we've been in circles or families where like no one else saw it, and you're just like, oh, you know, but like that's what's changing. So just know that I've seen it. I've had visions of this time, and it's so beautiful what we're stepping into. And so like also within that, like if you're having things come up in your life that feel really sticky, like maybe you know, maybe you're like, yes, this resonates, but like what do I do? Like I just got fired from my job, or like, you know, it's, you have to feel the feelings, like things are sticky and they can be really challenging. But every time those things have happened to me, it's been my totally been myself being like, what are you doing? You're not happy there anyway. And I'm like, I know, but I'm afraid to quit. And it's like, okay, well, now you're fired, so you gotta deal. You gotta do something that's gonna be more, you know, better for you. So the more we can just look at that stuff is like that nudge from the universe or that invitation, it's helpful. So I just wanted to share that if anybody's going through, yeah, just like the heaviness, you know?
Yeah, and with that, because felt that so many times, is the question, like if you're like, well, the ultimate purpose of all of us is to just like love and be love, and that's like the overarching. And then we have these like very specific fingerlets. So I always imagine it as we all come from the same source, right? We're all coming from the the water, and then we have fingerlets going in every direction to nourish the land all the ways. So that little fingerlet goes and waters this area, and that fingerlet waters this area. And if you haven't quite yet figured out which fingerlet you're meant to move on, you're going to move no matter what. And sometimes spirit's going to move you because you'll get fired or a really big thing, or you'll, you know, lose something or someone, and it will redirect you. And I always try to remember that everything being taken from me, quote unquote, taken, anything that's asking me to shift, anything that I've been rejected from, anything that's moving me is always elevating me. It's always bringing me, and it's always going to return me to source. Like we're all going to end up at the same place, right? And that's why I don't play in that competition thing anymore.
Right.
Like everything's collaborative. Like literally, as long as we are moving on the fingerlet of that stream that we're meant to be, and we're going to water and nourish this together, this whole planet. And if it hasn't been revealed to you yet what that purpose is, it will be. And everything right now that has been causing a density, a disharmony, a dysfunction, an imbalance, a blockage, hurt, pain, it's all trying to elevate us. It's all trying to bring it into balance. It's all trying to harmonize so that we can all be part of this thing that is nourishing and watering the planet. And I try to remember that. I'm like, that's why we go with the flow. It's
Yes.
not that it's always one way. It's that the flow is always going towards its need. Like it's always, if we can follow, only when we like bump up against the rock, or we're in the dam, we're like, we're not flowing, we're not going where we need to be. And I just think more and more of us are going to be, it is going to be revealed to us. I feel even in the density of this last year personally, of moving through so much grief, so much of this, like this, just this like density for myself, it was revealing to me who I came here to serve, who I came here to help. And what I've learned is like, it's not that far of an extension from someone just like me, someone who has moved through these experiences. And I had this really beautiful download the other day in breathwork of like, the reason I am able to lead and speak to the things that I speak to is because I'm doing them. Like, we lead based on what we have been doing for ourselves. And that is also like, this is why we're seeing so many sort of like people who are in a false narrative or like holding this inauthentic expression of themselves, is because they're not teaching or acting from a place of something they are doing themselves, right? That's what embodiment is. And these systems too, they weren't, and like the truth of that, authenticity of the truth is love. So if we're not acting from that love, we're not acting from that true authentic place of our source and our nature, I just don't think it can exist in this frequency anymore. I don't think it can exist in this elevated
No,
vibration of the planet, right?
and it's like hierarchy is going away. So, right, it's like, we've had all these institutions that are so grand. I grew up in an academic family, and the universities and these people know better. I mean, it's always looking outside and the hierarchical, and that's changing, and we're meant to really go inside and know ourselves, um and share from that space. Doesn't have to come from a book or whatever. And that feels scary at first because we've been so trained to just kind of parrot what the right people are saying, right? From the books or the things. But that's really shifting for us.
And
So
that's what sovereignty, right, is.
mhm.
And sovereignty reaches into every part of our lives. It's sovereign in ourselves of our understanding that we are self-resourced with love. We're never actually going to extract more love from anything outside of ourselves. We're fully capable and contained with it. Sovereignty in our ability to make choices, sovereignty in how we generate and regenerate resources, sovereignty in our decision making. Like, it's like sovereignty, it all to me always comes back to that, because it's really our ability to resource this inner landscape, this inner self-worth, this inner love, this inner space, to then bring it into right action with others, with these systems, with these experiences we're having. And I think too, like, one of the reasons we've looked to those institutions is like, okay, so can you, like, okay, I'm going to learn all this knowledge, and then you're going to give me the accreditation that I am capable of doing this. And there's a lot of nuance here. So, but like, for the majority of us, we understand that we have to self-initiate ourselves. We have to be the one to bring that forward right now in a lot of the ways that we're being called to. And that comes from resource and sovereignty. It comes from believing in ourselves. It comes from being like, yeah, no, like, I'm gonna study these things, I'm gonna accumulate these things, but I have to be the one to say, to like step into it, to embody it, to practice it, to like be living in it in order to then share it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of institutions have been keeping and hoarding, resources and information and all of this stuff, so that they can be the one to like dish it out and continue to make money off of it and
Well,
continue to capitalize on it.
and then within that, there's a certain degree, especially in certain subjects or cases where a lot of it is programming or propaganda too. So we're in a
Right.
time where a lot of that's falling apart too, and that can be pretty wild. But yeah,
Yeah,
that
we have to consistently challenge our belief systems right now. And the
yeah.
only way to do so is through curiosity, is to not know that, even every day I try to wake up and I'm just like, what do I know today? It's like,
I
not even
know.
like, what do I know right now? Like, we don't possibly begin to know or be finite about anything right now. Like,
I guess
everything's shifting.
being comfortable to a degree with the mystery is, I think I've always been good at that, which is why these times in a sense feel easier, I think, for me than a lot of people. I'm okay with that mystery. I like woke up and I saw a photo of like a two suns today, and I was like, oh, amazing. I would love to see that. I don't know. I don't know fully what's going on. So much is shifting. Our relationship to everything is going to be different, I think, in the future, to nature, to all the things. So I think like, yeah, I don't know. I loved this conversation with you, Katie, today. And it's like all the things, and to just remember to like, yeah, like you said so well, just be like, let us be playful and loose with it, and just have fun and not take it too seriously. It's just part of the journey, and to just walk in love.
Yeah. Leave the boardroom, walk into the
Leave the board
playground.
room, walk it
Yeah.
exactly. I love
Yeah.
that.
With all things right now.
With
Yeah.
all the things. Oh, This has been so fun and lovely, Tahiti. I love you so much. Thank you so much for talking with me. This was really great.
I love you, sweetie.
Yeah.
So good to connect. Thank you all
I
for listening and being here.
yes, thank you guys for joining, and I will put all of Tahiti's info below, and um can't wait to see you guys next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. Aloha.